welcome to Inside Edition, where we discuss national, regional, and international issues in depth. Since his appointment by the Regional Bureau for Arab States, RBAS, in UNDP as its Goodwill Ambassador for Climate Action in September 2019, Michael Haddad has been focusing on advancing and accelerating climate action across the Arab region and around the world. His main instrument in this endeavor is his ability to walk despite the physical challenges, which did not hinder his keen interest to participate in various sport events, including the 4th edition of the Asian Youth Para Games, which was recently held in Manama. To talk more about that, we are pleased to be joined here at the studio by UNDP Regional Goodwill Ambassador for Climate Action, Mr. Michael Haddad, right after this. Welcome back. Joining me in the studio is Mr. Michael Haddad. Thank you very much for being with us here today and for taking time out of your schedule to answer our questions. First off, welcome back to Bahrain. It's been a while since you've been in Bahrain. Can you tell us about that part of your history or your life coming in?
Please, first of all, Sarah, call me Michael.
Okay.
Please, let's lose the Mr. Haddad and the formalities. Yeah. Well, the moment that I arrived to Bahrain, it was like going back into history. So I was born here, I did my accident here, and for the past 32nd years, I was dreaming of how this country will shape after my accident. So I was amazed, and I have this feeling that I cannot explain. But the most important feeling that I have inside me is that after my accident, after I became paralyzed from the chest down here, I'm coming again with the UNDP program and the Paralympics Committee to introduce a new record. يعني, and this is where I'm reflecting deeply into two ideas. The first idea is my spinal cord injury, and the second idea over the years to overcome this disability. And 2 points are happening here in Bahrain, and there is a 32-year gap between them. So this is the feeling, yani, to explain it.
So it's a big milestone, as you have said, and there are a lot of emotions running through. But the fact of the matter here is that you are here for a mission that you have dedicated your whole life to, actually. You are a Goodwill Ambassador specifically for climate action, but in reality it's also for an advocate for people, for athletes, for normal people, everybody who has a spinal injury and has lost hope at some point of time. What can you tell us about your visit to the kingdom and how this will boost the relations with UN bodies in the future?
Sarah, as you know that Bahrain was working with UNDP and the United Nations, especially UNDP, on two important agendas or topics. One is youth, second is inclusion and people with disabilities. So I think that my entry here today and the launching of the Paralympics is a strong message for integration and inclusion. And as you know, as you might know, Sarah, that the Arab state region has the highest numbers when it comes to the percentage of people with disabilities. And our numbers show that in some areas there's 35% of the population that suffer from a kind of disabilities, and in other area it's 1 out of 7. So the general average, you see between 15 to 20% of the percentage of the population suffer from a kind of disability. Right. So this is where we start looking at the inclusion part. So are we going to take globally a decision, especially in the Arab state region, to include this high percentage of the population within the framework of the society, or we will continue excluding this? And especially now, this is a very important question to be addressed in the Arab state region, because we still have countries in this region with high percentages of people with disabilities that are still marginalized. But to summarize a very huge topic today, the bold decision is to start talking about this subject and to take positive actions toward inclusion and towards including this population within the framework of our society. And today, what makes me more excited is that we are using sports to do this,
Right.
and this is what's important.
Right. When before we go into the part of Bahrain's march in the sports arena towards a better future for the youth, when it comes to, as you said, inclusion, there have to be certain standards. And how are these standards put, or who meets these standards when it comes to the inclusion from a marginalized, as you said, area of science or people with disability or so on? How are they included after meeting certain standards?
Sarah, first it's the mentality. We have to change the perspective of addressing the basic needs for people with disabilities from a philanthropic approach to an approach enforced by laws and regulations. So if you are a person that suffers from a disability, you have the full right towards accessibility. This is how things starts. And you start building on this. So when you have the rights angle, you are part of this community. This is point number one. And there is another pillar in my opinion to fully integrate people within the framework of the society. First is transforming the mentality from a philanthropic perspective to a rights perspective, and another pillar is assistive technology. To develop the technologies from basic technologies, which are ramps and standards and methodologies and basic elements, braces or the width of the door is a technology. The hinges is a technology. Going up the scale to artificial intelligence and etc. So it's from -1, 0 till 100. So, but the idea is how to look and how to start connecting the dots. So there is the rights dots and pillar. And there is the assistive technology. And in between lies everything else. There is advocacy, promotions, inclusion, sports, awareness, and everything else. But we have the two pillars, technology and rights.
Yes, that's amazing. When it comes to sports, it empowers not only people that have been doing sports for a long time. It is known to empower also because you have that accomplishment sensation at the end. And sports is always the best way into the youth's hearts nowadays, especially with the changing of the different rules, different competitions coming up and awards. What can you tell us about that joint venture between sports or athletes as well as basically advocating for a certain cause, whether it is climate change, whether it is disability or anything in that? How is that merger possible?
Well, Sarah, thank you for all these important questions. You're amazing. And again, I want to thank Bahrain for hosting me and your esteemed show and all our viewers today. To me, sports is an international language where we all, regardless of our religion, race, we could connect and we could speak one language. And maybe this is one of the most important parts that I, as a UN ambassador, look at Bahrain and this initiative today, because we are connecting all the dots together. And sports, and especially as a universal language, it is also pointed towards the youth. Let us put all our differences aside. Let us compete positively and let us connect this international message. I myself, after taking the decision to stand up and walk, I use sports to communicate and to communicate climate action, because through sports we could create this area of communication where we could come together and be the change and make the change.
Absolutely, there is an equality there when it comes to the sports sector. Well, going back to the actual why you are here today and to talk to us more about, can you give us a brief idea about the importance of climate action per se and spreading awareness about it?
Well, Sarah, when it comes to this topic, I want to summarize it and to take the silence about it in a simple sentence or a simple piece of information. a couple of months ago at Glasgow, our Secretary General, the Secretary General of the United Nations, has declared that the Earth have reached a point of no return. We are in the red zone. The Arctic is melting. The high temperature is actually, you in the Gulf could feel it.
Yeah.
Especially in many areas around the world. We were talking before the live, in Europe, in Germany, how the climate is impacting the rising temperature, the planet in a catastrophic way.
Yes.
That's why it is time for us to unite together, to contribute, to push and to influence decision makers around the world that we have to act to save our planets.
Yeah.
We are in it's not an idea or a perspective anymore. We are in it, and we have to take positive actions towards this catastrophic impact that we as humans are going to face. We are facing now, and we are going to face
for generations to come.
And it might be catastrophic on our children. Yeah. So we have to look into the future, and we have to decide now, and we have to take actions now, and we have to save our planet. So this is, to me, the number one topic in the world.
To save what can still be saved, because as you said, there is no return from this point on. It's just going to get worse from here.
Yes.
Well, upon your appointment as a Goodwill Ambassador for the UNDP RBAS, you have announced that you are going to take the polar walk for climate action. This walk, you will be challenging athletic endeavors to walk 100 kilometers across the whole of the North Pole. What can you tell us about this noble initiative and how important it is to you personally as well?
Sarah, it has two angles. The first angle, as we discussed earlier, that I'm using my performance abilities, and I will explain it shortly after this point, to lobby action and to trigger a communication platform for world leaders and world influencers to communicate the climate agenda. And I'm doing it under UNDP, or the Development Program of the United Nations. We need to invite, through this performance and through sports, world leaders to communicate together. So I'm going to walk so others could talk. And from another perspective, why is this important? It is summarized by the past president of the Lebanese American University. Okay. He said that making a person who is paralyzed from the chest down walk 100 kilometers in the Arctic North is exactly like putting a person to walk on the moon technologically. So I'm inviting the scientific community to have this learning experience, to give it to others, and to challenge them to engineer. As we were talking before the air, if I want to perform or to move from point A to point B, it has to be calculated.
Right.
I engineer my body, I engineer my brain, I engineer the basic technologies and equipment to cope with such a performance.
Right.
And I'm using this performance to create this area of communication. It's not about me. It's not about only being a champion or this is what I am. It's about what we could do to others and how can we invite others to communicate this basic and most important topic that the whole humanity is facing. Yeah. And this is where the true disability is between you and me.
Absolutely.
It is Earth sitting in a wheelchair calling for us to survive.
Yeah. No, I see where you're coming from, and that's why I want to elaborate to our viewers right now how you actually got to the point of having this very specific, tailored regimen to prepare for an endeavor such as the walk in the North Pole. You have trained yourself. You have come up with your own ways and techniques to maneuver your specific disability with the environment around you. Can you tell us about the process of how you got to that point and how you have come up with the perfect formula or algorithm to maneuver Earth?
Well, Sarah, this is a very, very long topic, but I could try to summarize because it has many elements, and I could summarize it in three things. And I called it faith and determination. First, you have to believe in yourself, in your capabilities, in your mission to go beyond. and you have to be determined to go all the way. As you see, nothing came easy to me. If you see me standing, it's because I fell thousands of times. But along the way, I transformed my mental state from a state of defeat and giving up to a state of learning from my failures. From this, I discovered that things could be done. And the first important achievement that I have done in my life is the first step. When as you know, the way that I stand up and move, I wear an exoskeleton orthesis or a braces that holds my body in this upright position.
Right.
The way that I move, I calculate. I have to calculate each step at a time, and I carry my body each step at a time. Today, with my exoskeleton, I weigh between 98, depending, and 105 kilos.
Right.
So if I want to move from point A to point B, I have to calculate point B, point C, and I carry myself.
Yeah.
And actually, if I want to give you the measurements, it's times 30 the normal person. So if I walk 1 meter, it means that you walked 30 meters in terms of, because I'm paralyzed. So I use my upper body to project myself.
Right.
And another thing is that I consume a lot of energy, and there is a lot of impacts on my body. So this is how we invited a multi-dimensional team to work together, because my performance has to be engineered. It's about sports, it's about neurology, it's about physical therapy, it's about engineering, it's about nutrition. So we combined all this knowledge so that we could put it somewhere, and we start benefiting others to do it.
Absolutely.
And the most important part, it's not only because I'm disabled or I have a physical disability or paralysis. My brain is like many other brains. So it's about everybody. If you want to reach this levels of achievement, you could do it if you truly believe in yourself.
Absolutely.
And you could engineer your brain to do so.
Absolutely.
And this is the science behind what we are doing.
Absolutely. Disabilities have many colors. The WHO always updates the list of disabilities that are considered hindrances for a person's normal flow of life. And to be able to take this and make it into something as fruitful as you have done, really a lot of respect for that. Michael, you have served as climate change champion for the UNDP in Lebanon after completing 3 record-setting feats to raise awareness of key environmental challenges. What can you tell us about this experience specifically in your home country, knowing the resources of your home country, the beauty of it, and how it talks to the rest of the world, let alone the region itself?
So it was the beginnings of my decision making, when I decided, okay, I want to use my performance to communicate. I want to transform the sports element into a communication element. So the first world record that I have done is that I walked in the mountains of Lebanon, 19 kilometers, which is, in my calculations, 60,000 steps. I lifted myself 60,000 times.
Oh,
imagine.
Wow.
Yes. To communicate 3 important messages. It is the person, the I, the we, and the ultimate we. The I is nothing is impossible. With faith and determination, we could break our own barriers, overcome, because we all of us, in one corner of ourselves, suffer from a kind of disability. We have disabilities. Okay, so no one is perfect.
Whether mental health, whether physical, everything.
Yeah. And it could be a temporary disability, and it's up to us, it's up to our brain to choose if we let this disability become a true disability, or if we could overcome this disability. So in my case, I defied paralysis. I worked on myself. I walked differently. I managed to break this barrier. So I managed to transform this ability to become a state of mind. So my message was, in the I perspective, with faith and determination, nothing is impossible, and disability is a state of mind. We choose. The second thing is the we. It's not important to succeed alone. It is when we do things together.
Absolutely.
In this walk, I was carrying the emblem. It is our cedar tree. And I carried it. And as you know, at the time, we had conflict in our country. We still have this conflict. But my message was, it's time for us to break our own barriers and to start giving back to our identity.
Working together.
Yes, and each and every person could influence the together part, the collective intelligence together, and we could change.
Yeah.
We could change. We could build better forward. We could build forward better, always. And the third thing is the ultimate we.
Okay.
And today Lebanon is a green country, but we are losing this green. So it's not important that we together would make this change. It's not only about us, about our identity and our Arab identity, it's also about our planet. We are losing who we truly are. So it's time for us to act, and it is never impossible. We could do this together.
Definitely. How did you contribute to basically supporting the UNDP's global response to mitigate the adverse social and economic impacts of well, first of all, climate change, and second of all, COVID-19. I mean, Lebanon, you talked about specifically the resources. Lebanon's, for those that don't know, Lebanon's main resource is its nature. The beautiful caves, the tourism, the beautiful mountains, the erz tree, as you said, or the pine tree of Lebanon.
Cedar.
Cedar, sorry, my bad. So yeah, the cedar tree. This nature in Lebanon has made it what it is. How, from your point of view, do you contribute, or did you contribute to supporting the UNDP's global response to mitigating these adverse social and economic impacts, whether from climate change or COVID-19?
So when it comes to the UNDP is the development arm of the United Nations. So when we talk about development, it is plans, actions over 10 and 20 year projections, and it is working with the decision makers to take direct actions. And also, if you want, personally speaking, if I want, because you asked me a personal oriented, you have to be inspired. And the current administrator of the UNDP, Achim Steiner, actually is a leader that inspired me into this action. He is a person who's taking this institution, which is an old and, if you like, bulky institution, into a more a modern way of action. And this is why I'm their ambassador in this region, because I believe in his leadership, and I believe in the family that is working, especially all over the Arab state region and in the world, because we believe that we could have a platform where we could impact people.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to say more than that, but when people are united together and work multinationally, and the United Nations is the best place for us to communicate, because it is the place where we, the people, is the main element or the main cornerstone of this foundation, of this World Foundation.
It's a platform.
Yeah. And as for the COVID-19 part, or stepping ahead of COVID-19,
which I personally think is part of the climate change.
Yes,
so.
yes. I don't know at this time. I have to follow the rules and regulations, but I'm a strong believer that your idea might be correct, because this is the outcome of the mismanagement of the planet. I totally agree, and this is the outcome of the lack of awareness that we as humans are not calculating.
Right.
Okay. So back, I was preparing myself to cross the 100 kilometers in 2020. It came COVID, but we did not stop. We decided to look about the. Yani, I was training. I was very fit. We had the whole scientific team working. We were preparing to walk in 2020, and here came COVID and impacted all of us.
Yes.
So we directly took a decision to start contributing to the pandemic, especially in this extreme lockdown. Yani, we were trapped in our own clusters or in our own houses for 2 years, if you want to calculate it more or less.
Of course.
So from that end, we had to look at the most vulnerable people. What is this category, or what was the level of, how did COVID-19 affect our communities? And here came the red light: people with disabilities. People with disabilities, especially in our region, were the most affected people when it comes to COVID-19.
Okay.
Because they were entrapped in their house. I'm talking about
I
a
understand.
majority, يعني in a majority perspective.
I absolutely understand. From a point of view of,
Yes.
of even being adapting to disabilities from before the COVID, it wasn't at the point where it should have been.
Yes, and COVID made things extremely worse. يعني the lack of medical treatments. You know, a lot of people with disabilities need physical therapy. They need accessibility. They need others for their survivals.
Yeah.
And COVID-19 stopped it. So that's why we launched the idea of stepping beyond COVID-19, especially to zoom on the basic needs for people with disabilities that were extremely affected by this pandemic. So the two things that we did, first we were planning to do something in Cairo in Egypt where we could do an empowerment walk at the slopes of Egypt. This was the first planned initiative where we walk together so that we could communicate a strong message towards this COVID-19 recovery. But before that came the BEirut explosion, and we shifted. We shifted our. We did both of them, but we shifted the
after the shock.
We shifted the time schedule, and we did a BEirut walk for inclusion where. And
it went from there, and how big it has become. Actually, the BEirut Walk for Inclusion was actually a very big pillar of the movement to spread awareness about not just climate change or disability, but basically of Lebanon and the suffering that happened at that time itself, and the rebuilding and the rebuilding, absolutely,
and to build inclusive. And this was the most important part. And this is where you see UNDP playing this role. And when you have a country, in Lebanon, our capital faced the second largest explosion in humanity. The impact to see your capital not existing anymore, in a fraction of 3-4 minutes. So, and then there are the people, and then there is this suffering, and then there is this arm of the United Nations telling the whole world we have to help Lebanon, and telling the Lebanese government or the Lebanese people, if you're gonna build, we are ready to help you to build back better, and to pinpoint people with disabilities cannot be marginalized. They must be part of the community. We must work together, and we must help the government as UNDP to develop these strategies and to implement them within their infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So this is how we connect things, and this is how we point on the importance of the United Nations arm. And this is why I love what I do, and I'm very honored to be UNDP's ambassador for the region.
It's an honor for us that you are able to talk to us about this. Actually, I want to stay in Lebanon with my next questions. You have been described by the Lebanese American University as the walking lab for science and humanity. How did your case contribute hugely to the assistive and exoskeleton technology?
Well, as mentioned, I could take it to the extreme.
Yeah.
And the most important part, Sarah, is that I'm willing to take the fall. So we need to fail so that we could learn.
Yes.
And they could experiment on me. And I could take this cluster of ideas and the cluster of knowledge. And what I mean by cluster of knowledge, the elements, the different elements. Because, without nutrition, you don't have performance. Without working on performance, you have to understand the framework of the muscles and the anatomy of the muscles. With the muscle, the brain must come to connect. Right. So it's all interconnected together. And today we have the technology to measure brain activity. We have the technology to enhance human performance. We have the knowledge of the basic materials to use and to collect all the elements, to combine them, and to invite the scientific community to contribute. Because it's not only for people that are paralyzed. It may expand to people that are willing to go beyond paralysis. Yes. So this is from a scientific perspective.
Yes.
And there is many elements. And we are talking about the direct impact. That there is a very big part about psychology, the way of thinking, the way we overcome our disability, the way we think differently. Because the thinking and the way we think is of equal importance about the that parallels the physical science and the physical research, because psychology plays an important part, and the connection between all the elements, and also more and more is the element that how to communicate or how to transform this performance to a more global communication tool, to invite others, to invite the responsible decision maker, the responsible decision makers, whether from the private sector or from the public sector or from any sector, to sit and communicate what is important. And in my case, it is the climate agenda.
Yes, yes.
So they framed me as a walking lab because together we are creating this space to give something to the learning community, and to invite the decision makers around the world to communicate. And we are learning.
Yes, we are. Actually, I want to stay within this vicinity when it comes to doing sports and everything, and being part of that youth movement. Bahrain has done a lot of strides. When we talk about, I'm not going to go much farther than COVID. When COVID hit Bahrain, and we never really had we never had a lockdown, but we did have basically intuitions that we should stay at home and we should take the life easier. Exercise became a very big part of Bahrain's social environment, and then other things came up like online walking competitions. Exercise places and gyms started putting their spinning bikes in people's houses, and then they had an online community. And my point is community, and the support of community, which is important in everything. You don't maneuver disability by yourself physically only, but also mentally. It takes a big toll, which can cause even more problems. So having that environment, that community around you, from my point of view as a nurse and as a journalist, is very important. For your point of view, with your experience, how is it important to have a community that speaks your language and that gives that awareness further, knowing your ideas, and gives it further on? How important is that in all of your
factors? It is beyond important. It is essential. And this is, if you want to look at the leadership of the future, this is a main element on how to take our being from this era to the future. So the element of sports, the element of inclusion, the element of a universal language, the element of doing things together, that is a true indicator of avant-garde leadership. And this is how Bahrain is doing it. Yani to invite people from all over the world to point on science, to point on technology, to point on the element of the human being, is something that we as Arabs all over the world miss and need this type of language, and Bahrain is doing it.
Yeah, and I actually mentioned this specifically because you participate as can you tell us about your participation at the 4th edition of the Asian Youth Para Games, which were held here are held here in the kingdom itself?
As I said, I have done my accident here in Bahrain, and there is one important element that my father always points in. When you're at Bahrain, you have to thank the Bahraini government, especially the late Prince Sheikh Isa, because he is the person who and his government who sponsored my medical treatment directly after my accident and injury. So each and every time when I told my dad that I'm coming here, and my family, my mother, I'm coming to Bahrain, they were all nostalgic, and he told me, you have to remember to thank Sheikh Isa all the time, and this leadership. And my father was working here in the 80s. He was an aircraft engineer.
Okay.
Yes, and he Bahrain was part of who we are as a family. So this is from one end, and from the other end is my participation now after I overcome my disability. There is this special, I don't know how to frame it, but this special feeling of, conquering the impossible,
Yeah.
going beyond, from the country that everything started and how this country is leading into the future. So in a nutshell, there is this emotional part, and in another part there is this performance that I'm proud to do in Bahrain. Today there is no category for people with spinal cord injuries to compete standing up.
Yeah.
So it was a great honor for me to do this performance, this 100-meter dash, to reflect three things. First is that it's a new record.
Yeah.
It's a new category for sports, and Bahrain, with its avant-garde vision to the future, is hosting this to tell the world there is a space for every one of us to communicate, even in sports, even in special missions in sports. We have this platform to communicate globally.
Right.
So this is one.
Yeah.
This new record, or this new category of performance. Second is inspiration. We are in this together.
The
We want-
community.
Yes, and we want to inspire people to go beyond.
Yeah.
Okay, to go beyond. Sports is the perfect panel. And three, in my opinion, is to invite this learning society. In my case, impactful. This could be done.
Yes.
Science could do it.
Yeah.
We could all learn from each other. And today, Bahrain is the perfect hub to do this.
Yes, absolutely. And I would add on that as well, as you have mentioned, this is a personal milestone for you, to be back in Bahrain after 33 years, and to be back a different person, a stronger person, a person full of innovation and of intuition, and a will to teach and to learn as well. And I think you being here is a big motivation to everybody, not just the communities of sports or the communities of Paralympics or the communities of people with disabilities, but in general of perseverance. And we salute you for that, Mr. Michael. From your point of view, what is the importance of your initiatives to spread awareness and encourage people, especially the youth, to overcome the daily challenges caused by injury specifically? But injury could mean anything that hinders your normal life cycle or a fulfilled life.
Okay, Sarah, it's very simple. The nature of human beings is that if you do something, people will follow. Okay, يعني we it's not we copy each other, but we inspire each others. Yeah. Okay, and this is how we coexist. So if you do something and you prove it could be done, others will come and do it better. And this is how we change. Okay, we add this element, other elements will be motivated, and this is how things move. Right. So from that angle, and the thing is, it's not that I do it alone. In my life, I maybe I take all the credit, but there is a lot of people working behind the scenes to make me come here. And I hope if you allow me to thank our office here in UNDP and the people that are working, Ali Salman, Nu'man al-Sayyad, all those people at the UNDP family that worked very hard for the past 6 months to make this happen. And it is not only in Lebanon, it's not only in Bahrain, it's in the Arab state region, it's in New York, it's all over the globe. We are everywhere. At the end of the day, this is the positive side of COVID. So maybe COVID taught us that we are not alone. Yeah. We are always in this together. Yes. So what impacts one person might impact many, and we have to be aware about this collective collaboration together. So from that end, yes, I truly believe that we could make that change. The individual could make this change, and we believe that this individual could work within a wider we, and this wider we could do wonders. And we are in this together.
One thing that I just want to ask you at this point is, I mean, you talked about the help that you have had in order to come to this point. And I think hearing it from you yourself, that we are actually dependent on each other. It's not something to shy away from or to go away. So as a ambassador of goodwill, what is your message to anybody who is struggling in overcoming hindrances by themselves. How would you tell them to adapt to life after that? What are things that they can do in order to improve their life from your experience, what you've gone through?
To be honest, as a Goodwill Ambassador, is that we the people have the power to influence the decision maker. Okay? It's not only the decision, it's the decision maker in many elements, whether in the private sector, because the decision maker or the leader in the private sector is influenced by the consumer or the people in general. So is the decision maker in the public sector. So to go back in the beginning of our conversation, the people has the full power or have the full power to influence the decision maker. They must always act positively to influence the decision maker, whether in inclusion, to transform the way the decision maker look on the element of disability, to transform it from a philanthropic approach to a right-based approach, and also to influence the decision maker to invest in technology and to raise awareness through sports, inclusion, to make things happen in action, to go beyond. So this is the power all people have, especially people with disabilities, and it is exactly the same when it comes to climate action and zero carbon emission and the rising temperature. So it is all how we influence each other, because if we influence each other, we could influence the decision makers to take bold actions towards, especially the climate agenda, and because we need bold actions. We need things to move as soon as possible, or we will be paying a very hefty price.
Absolutely, and having a decision maker with an open mind to the innovations and to the new ways of solving these problems is also a very big plus on our side. Thank you very much for being with us today here, Michael, and for telling us your story and how it motivated you to make a better world for all of us through climate change and motivation. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you, Sam.
And I'd also like to thank you, dear viewers, for watching us, and we'll see you next week in another episode of Inside Edition.